Howdy Beans, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Howdy Beans podcast. I'm your host, Luke the Howdy Bean. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're all good, as per usual. In today's episode, we're looking at Torchwood Border Princes Book 2. Before we get into all of that, I want to do a bit of housekeeping, because I like to keep my house nice and clean. So make sure that you follow me at X, at howdybeans_pod. If you listen to this on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And finally, if you listen to this on Spotify, don't forget to give me a follow, as well as rate the podcast 5 stars. So, as I mentioned, today we're going to be looking at Torchwood Border Princes. This is part of my overall sort of Torchwood series. So, I reviewed series 1 of Torchwood, which you can check out now on the podcast if you're interested. I also reviewed the last book, which was Torchwood Another Life by Peter Angles, which I've reviewed that's on the podcast now if you want to check that out. So today we're looking at book 2. How the series is going to go for anybody that is new that's jumping in here. I've decided to look at the first 3 books in the Torchwood series. The reason being is that I am a real sort of stickler for continuity. I like to follow things as they were published or as they came out. So the series came out, and before series 2, and I think during series 3 of Doctor Who, when the Doctor had Martha as a companion, they did 3 novels. And then when those 3 novels were done, then series 2 sort of carries on. So I'm very much a stickler for following continuity as much as I possibly can. So that's why I'm looking at the first 3 books. As I mentioned, I looked at the first book. It was a bit slow, to be honest, to begin with. Interesting premise. It just, had a few issues here and there. But again, if you want to know my full thoughts and feelings, check out that review. Today we're going to be looking at Border Princes. I'm very much excited for this one. To be honest, it's taken me a while to get round to actually doing this review because the book is so good, which I'll talk about in a minute in my sort of first impressions. But I'm enjoying it so much that I haven't really been able to put it down and find time to actually record. And as well, it's currently middle June and it's really, really hot here. It's very muggy. And I tell you the truth, and any podcaster would tell you this, doing podcasting in a closed environment with no windows open, no fans, nothing like that, doors closed, so there's no air getting in during the summer recording is an absolute nightmare. And I'm so glad that I don't have to do this podcast with any cameras on. So I can sit here with no t-shirt on or like a vest on and be completely fine. It's been an absolute nightmare to get around to recording this, but I'm glad I finally found the time on a cool day where I can record it because this book is really, really, really good and interesting. So before we get into all that, I want to read the synopsis of the book. So it goes as follows. The end of the world began on Thursday night in October, just after 8 in the evening. The amok is driving people out of their minds, turning them into zombies and causing riots in the streets. A solitary diner leaves a Cardiff restaurant, his mission to protect the principal, leading him to a secret base beneath a water tower. Everyone has a headache. There's something in Davy Morgan's shed, and the Church of St. Mary in the Dust, demolished in 1840, has reappeared, though it's not due until 2011. Torchwood seems to be out of their depth. What will all this mean for the romance between Torchwood's newest members? Captain Jack Harkness has something more to worry about, an alarm, an early warning given to mankind and held inert by Torchwood for 108 years, and now it's flashing. Something is coming, or something is already here. That is the synopsis of the book, and if that doesn't pull you in already, then I don't know what will. As for sort of my first impressions, unlike the first book, which I on sort of hindsight and reflection, I do want to note that I do kind of feel bad for Peter Angles a little bit in his last book, Another Life. The reason being is the fact of he had the hard job of, because it's the first book in this new series, he has to do the legwork of setting up the world, of setting up what everything looks like, describing what kind of person Jack is, what person Gwen is, Tosh, Yanto, Owen, he's having to do all the actual legwork as well as tell his original story. So in hindsight, I kind of feel sorry for him because a lot of his book was very slow because I'd already watched the show. I already knew all these characters. So for me, it was like, okay, get on with it. Whereas book 2, it's already assumed that you've read book 1, or at least, you've seen the show by now. So it's no need to kind of be like, oh, this is this person, this is this person. There's no sort of need to explain that. It's just like, here's the plot, here's the story, go with it. And it works so brilliantly. So to kind of give you the long and short of it, what I've gotten so far, I'm about 100 pages in and this is about a 280 or so page book. So I would say I'm somewhat halfway. There's this big mystery going on. The book basically just begins where they're already on a call and they go out and there's people acting a bit crazy. There's a signal that they're trying to follow. And it turns out there's this device called the amok. And whenever you're near it, whoever holds it, it kind of just takes control of them. And it gives you major headaches. Everybody's going crazy around them. It's causing riots. They're getting really nauseous. It's like a really bad migraine. If you've ever had a really bad migraine, it puts you out of commission for a good hour or two. It makes you really nauseous and can make you sick. Just think of that, but like 10 times worse. And so you've got that mystery going of what the amok is, and that the amok is like. It's I don't know how to explain it. It's like from another dimension. It's like when you look at it, its dimensions in terms of its shape and the way it looks doesn't fit into our dimension. So when you look at it, it makes you feel uncomfortable. It makes you sort of look at it, you feel sick, you feel nauseous, you want to get rid of it, you want to hide it, you want to cover it up, you don't want to look at it again because your brain can't compute the dimensions that it is, like the shapes and the way it looks and all that. So this device, trying to figure out what it is, where it's from, why is it causing so much. And then you've got this other side story going on, which is just as fascinating. You've got this old man who was in his allotment. He was digging in his allotment, and there's a little like a bed next to his allotment that the guy that was there hasn't used it in years. So he went, well, he's not coming back. I'll use it to plant some potatoes and things. And as he's digging in, getting through all of the sort of mulching up, ready to sort of dig in it, he finds this thing. I'm not really sure if it's a miniature robot or if it's a device or what it is, but he has it and he hides it in his shed and he talks to it and it talks back in like beeps and clicks and that sort of thing. So there's this whole story of what's going on here and what's he's doing and how that's linked in. And obviously his cat's gone missing as well. So you've got that side story, somehow that links in. And then you've got this strange individual. Well, actually, all right. No, then you've got, I won't get into that bit. I'll get into that bit in a minute. Then you've got this new guy that's joined the team. His name's James, right? But they're talking to him like he's been there forever. Like he's always been there. Like he started when Gwen started. Now, again, I've watched the show. I've read the last book, right? I know James wasn't there. There's no such thing as James. So it's that huge mystery of who is James. I know he hasn't been there all this time, but they're all acting like he is. And it's very strange of like, okay, where's this James bloke come from? And like there's moments in the book where it quotes things that have happened in the show. And I'm like, I know James wasn't there because he wasn't on screen. You know what I mean? So it's these moments of like trying to figure out who James is, who this new member is, why they all remember him, but even I don't. You know, I feel like what a crazy person, but like, who is this person? You're all acting like he's part of the furniture, but I've never seen him before. So you have that mystery. And then you've got the biggest mystery of all. And to me, the most fascinating part of this story is this bloke called Mr. Dine, sorry. And I don't know if he's a robot or if he is sort of like a deep spy or something like that. Like, no, you hear these like watch these stories about like the Winter Soldier, for example, and like they hear code phrases, and then they go from being a normal person, and they just get turned on, they get triggered, and next thing you know, they go off and they do their mission. It's kind of like that with this bloke. The only difference is the fact of there's this guy called the Principal that he has to protect, and Mr. Dime will stay local. He'll go around his normal day. He goes to a cafe and he has a meal every day, and he's wearing a smart suit. But every now and then he gets activated, and he just has to go. Like no matter what he's doing, he's got a drop thing. He just goes, and he's got to go save and protect the Principal. I have my theories of who I think the Principal is. I won't spoil it at the moment. I'll mention when we find out, which I have a feeling we will. But I have a theory. I think I know who the Principal is so far in the story. And he has to go and save this Principal, look after this Principal, whoever this person is. So far, this mystery is really intriguing. And like I said, unlike the last book, it gets going. It really kind of gets to the point of this is the story, this is what's going on, this is the mystery, go for it. And then from there, you're just following this mystery onwards. It's not slow. It's not repetitive. There's not a moment where I'm sitting there going, I'm lost or I'm confused. Again, there's no issues like the last book. It had a lot of issues of spelling mistakes and issues like that, which again, being dyslexic was a bit of an issue for me. This one is well written, well done. And it's one of those where I look back and I'm like, I do feel sorry for Peter Angles because Dan Abnett, who's who wrote this book, he hasn't had the issues of having to set anything up. He can just be like, I've got an adventure, I've got a story, and I'm going to put them into it, and that's it. Torchwood, I'm telling the story. Whereas the last guy had to do a lot of explaining. So I feel like he drew the short straw, where like it's not like Doctor Who, where the Doctor's already established. You don't have to explain who the Doctor is. You can just have the Doctor go on an adventure, and that's it. In the first book, he had to explain everything. So in hindsight, looking back on it, I do kind of feel a bit bad for him. But yeah, it was an interesting story, but just not as good. But with Dan Abnett here, which again I had complete faith because, as I said in the last review, talking about Dan, he is a legendary writer. Again, he writes for Warhammer 40k, like he does the Horus Rising, sort of the Horus Heresy books, which again are on my list of books that I want to read. So he's a really, really good writer. So I had no doubt this would be good. And it is. The mystery is interesting. I'm intrigued. I want to know more. And like I said, it was difficult because I had to pull myself away. If it wasn't for all these hot days, I wouldn't be reading as much. I probably would have stopped after 50 pages and did the introduction and kept reading. But because the weather's been so hot, I've been outside, I've been reading on my phone, reading a little few pages here and there. But it's so good and interesting. I just don't want to stop. I almost didn't want to do the introduction. I thought, yeah, you know what, I'll just do a little bit more. And I was before I started recording, I read another chapter, and the mystery and the intrigue is like it's brilliant. Like it really is, and it kind of gets me why this book is rated so low. Because like the last one is rated quite highly with an average rating of a 3.52, and this one has a 3.41. And I just don't get what it's rated so low, because I would say so far this one is 10 times better than the last one in terms of mystery, story, intrigue, and the writing and the pacing. It's just brilliant. So, I'm just waffling at the moment. I'm just excited. I'm really, really enjoying myself, and that's a good thing. Now, to be honest, it could fall flat. It could generally, keep going, and it could be really, really interesting and then have a really bad ending. It could do. I always suspend my disbelief. I always go into everything that I do empty, because again, if it's that idea, if you prepare for failure, you can never fail, or something like that, or if you go in with no hope and you get nothing, you're not disappointed. I don't know. I'm not very good when it comes to quotes, things like that. The point is, I'm trying to say is I try to go in empty so that if it turns out not being as good as I imagined it, I'm not as disappointed, So I'm excited. I can't wait. And yeah, so I'm going to go off and finish this book now. And then when we come back, we'll talk about my first impressions, stories of characters, a bit of the continuity, because I've already noticed a few things that it kind of connects to. And then I'll give you my overall thoughts. So until then, I will see you in a minute. And welcome back, everybody. So I've now finished Border Princes. It took me a lot longer than I thought it would do. It's been a very busy month for me, but I'm finally finished. And my sort of first impressions is I really, really enjoyed it. The mystery prolonged. As I said in the introduction, which I did ages ago, but for memory's sake, but a couple of seconds for you guys, the whole mystery of who James was, I was spot on over who James was, which I'll get into all of that a little bit later. But even though I knew what, or had hintings, an idea of what it was going to be and who James was and his involvement in the story, it was still a pleasant surprise when I actually found out. I was like, oh, even though I knew it was coming, I still enjoyed it because, again, the writing was so well done and James was such an interesting character. And all the other stuff going on, the amok as well, and then finding out what was going on with Mr. Davy and his shed and that thing that he'd found and stuff like that. Generally, what the author was able to do here was really, really brilliant. It's a self-contained story, and I'll talk about it a bit later about continuity, but it's very self-contained. Like it's Torchwood, but it's Torchwood in a week, basically. So instead of just like one big adventure, you've got Torchwood dealing with a lot of things through a week period, and as they go through this like week or so period, a lot of stuff's going on. You've got the amok and all the people going crazy. Then you've got this serial G sort of robot that's like going on a war robot that's going on like a rampage, killing people and ripping people to shreds, but only this old man can talk to it. So you've got that story going on, and then you've got this whole James thing, and then you've got this whole thing going on with this weird elusive guy in a suit with blonde hair called Mr. Dine, and then there's another guy that turns up that's just like him, but his name's Mr. Lowe. So you've got all that mystery going on. So, and then you've got this whole thing with this church as well that is like from the like 1890s, and it's not really meant to reappear until 2011, but it appeared really, really early. And then Jack and Tosh gets trapped there, and there's a creature there. So, it's a very interesting, self-contained week of events for Torchwood, basically. Like, and I really enjoyed that. Like, it made me feel that I was watching multiple episodes. It made me felt like I was watching a short series of Torchwood, basically. That like one episode was this, next episode was that, and then you had little bits of details here and there that were going out about who James is and who Mr. Dime is and how that all links in, and does it all link into the Amok, or did the Amok got nothing to do with it, so on and so forth. And then these little sprinkles here and there. Then you finally get to like the series finale, and then it's all focused and gung ho on who James is and what's going on there. And I really appreciate that. I've never actually read a book that's it's set out like this before. Usually, like, again, you just have one overarching story, and you have a beginning, middle, and end, and that's it. Where here you've got this adventure, then you got this adventure, then you this one, and again, being Torchwood, what Torchwood is, being on the Rift in Cardiff, it is going to be non-stop. There's going to be weevils, and there's going to be crises and events all the time. And sometimes there's just days where they've got to do paperwork, and they do. And this is like, okay, you read that thing with the Amok, that's dealt with now, got to do paperwork. But at the same stage, there's another case. So like, Gwen, you do paperwork, me and Owen are going to go off, or Jack and Tosh are going to go off, and so on and so forth. And yeah, it just feels lived in. So Dan does a really sort of good job there. So yeah, first impressions, I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was fantastic. As for sort of the story, going into a bit more spoiler detail here. And now I don't want to go too much into spoilers, so I'm not going to give away the overall sort of reveal of who or what James is and how he links into it all. I'm not going to talk about that. But I will talk about sort of the cases. That's what I'm going to call them. They're not really cases, but I'm going to call them about the cases. So you've basically got, beginning of the book starts off, and you've got case one, which is the Amok, which is, as I said in the introduction, is a device that's like a dodecahedron. Like it's a dodecahedron, but like it's a full fourth dimension sort of dodecahedron. We're only in like the sort of 3 dimensions. So looking out in a 4 dimension, it doesn't belong in our universe, and it plays mind games, and you learn as to the reason why it's sending people crazy is the fact of it's a toy. It's basically it's like another a 4th dimensions universe's version of like Tetris or a Rubik's Cube. Probably Rubik's Cube, probably best way to example it. And imagine if you was in the 4th dimension, how what sort of things would you have? You'd have something that tests your mind. But the problem is the fact of humans only think in 3 dimensions. We don't think in the 4th dimension. So this little plaything of this small little children's toy of an alien thing, really, which is normal to a 4D dimensional being, but to a 3-dimensional being, our brains can't compute it. So just looking at it hurts us. And it sends people crazy. And it's this whole thing of mine. It's my go, it's my turn. And it's messing with our brains. And it sends like a shockwave and a wave, and just sends loads of sort of people crazy. And it's kind of fascinating how, like, that sort of thing. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh, how does that link in? How does that link in with this person? How does that link in with that person? Is the Amok, is that the principle? Is that the thing that Mr. Dime is trying to protect? And then you have this other story, which I'm going to call case 2. Case 2, you've got Mr. Dave. Mr. Dave is an old man, and he's an old soldier. Like, he fought in World War II. He was on the shores on Normandy Beach during D-Day, and he went in. He saw a lot of his friends die, as most he lives through sort of the trauma, but he survived. He came home and lived with his wife till she died in, I think, 1990. But still sort of talks to her. He's never remarried, never got another relationship, and loves the life of that. And he's just living the simple life now with his allotment shed. But again, he's being tormented by the local kids. They call him weird. They call him a freak. They're really, really, really mean to him. And he's sad and lonely. All he really's got is his memories and his cat. And then he finds this device, this metal cylinder, in one of his allotments, and he looks after it, and then it starts to hum at him, and he starts to talk. They start to talk to each other, and you as the story goes on, you start to learn that this cylinder is a robot, is like a drone sort of thing that was made by this species called the Milak or Milauk or Milik or something like that. And basically, this species. And again, I love it when books and science fiction books go into little details like this. This is what the reason why I read sci-fi. It's basically like this race basically went to war with this another race, and they basically made robots. But the problem is their robots were killing people, but they weren't efficient enough, as you know, in a layman's terms. They weren't winning the war quick enough. In probably a better way to explain it. And so this race decided, well, we need a robot that has full Terminator, basically. No, like all complete logic, no emotion, nothing like that. We just need a soldier that will point it, kill that, destroy it, and it will do it, no questions asked. And they did. The problem is the fact of by the time that these robots, these serial Gs, had won the war and destroyed everything, the whole Galactic Council came along and said, no, you can't do that. You've got to deactivate them. But the problem is the fact that by the time that law was passed and all that the race that had made them had gone extinct. And what that meant was the fact of these devices were then scattered all over the galaxy, all over the universe, and they're just lying dormant everywhere and anywhere. They just, one happens to be in Cardiff. And it basically, this old man finds it, and the robot ends up talking through bleeps and clicks and sort of ums and ahs and that sort of thing to the old man, and they talk to each other because they're both soldiers. It's like a common ally in each other. It's a real sweet moment, but the problem is the fact of what the old man has gone through compared to what the robot has gone through and has done. The old man can't deal with it. He can't handle it. When the old man goes to sleep, the robot is channeling and connecting dreams to the old man. So the old man's he's waking up in a cold sweat and having nightmares of the atrocities that this robot has done and caused on these planets and to these other sort of species. So it's doing a lot of harm to him, a lot of effect to him, and the robot doesn't understand that because it's a robot. It's got no emotions really. It's just the only connection is the fact of I've managed to find an old soldier. You understand. You're the only person who understands. You know, and the old man's like, I get it, I do understand, but he's trying to talk to him, trying to be his best friend, and he ends up having to call sort of the MOD. Torchwood sort of intercepts it, goes to find it. The cylinder ends up sort of growing and grows these really long, spindly arms, legs. Has it's like a cylinder shape, but for eyes, it's just like a yellow bar for eyes and a little yellow bar for a mouth. And it like puts out psionic beams, really high-powered, strong psionic beams. Almost kills Owen, and it's a absolutely fantastic sort of action set piece as well. Like, and I'm not going to go into sort of the full details because going into I'll give away a bit of things. But at this stage with this case, around the middle of the book, you start to learn and figure out a lot more about the principal, about Mr. Dine, Mr. Lowe. You learn more about James and stuff like that, and how it all links in. Then there's another one. Which again, there's another case as well, which is a smaller case than the first two. And it basically turns out there's a guy that's in a suit, and he's a con man, and he somehow has found this device that looks like a liver or a kidney, really, and he keeps it in this little briefcase. And what is every time he's knocking on people's doors, cold calling, and he's saying, "Hello, would you like to buy a window?" And people are like, "No, I don't need a new window." And then he'll squeeze this device in his pocket, and they'll just let him come in, and then he'll rinse them of all their money. Basically, just taking all their money from them. And Jack and James go out and try to do it. They come back completely confuzzled, trying to, like, you know, they don't remember it. They're like, he's not the guy. The guy does it again. They go after him. He tries it on James. It doesn't work this time. So the guy's freaking out, then they chase him, and they manage to sort of apprehend him. And again, James does some things in this one where again, it links to the fact of he shouldn't be able to do that. How did he do that? There's no way he could be strong enough to do that, or he could jump that high, blah, blah, blah. And it starts to lay the groundwork of things. Something's not going right here. And they manage to find this little fleshy device, and then they put it into storage. And this is what I mean. Like, there's so many different cases, little things going on, and it does feel like a series, like a serial. But each one of them has little details here and there. Again, when they first get the amok, and they're all trying to like a football, throw it at each other as they're being chased by this huge mob of like raging homeless people and people in shops and that around Cardiff Bay. and they're all getting affected by it. And then James grabs it, and then also Mr. Dime shows up, and it's things like that. And then with the robot, and again, I can't really get into that more details, but there's a big action sequence. Blah blah blah. I can't get into it. I'm sorry. Read the book. Like I said, generally read the book. It's really really good. And then the whole thing goes on there. And then again, what you got this small case that James does stuff that he shouldn't be able to do, and it's little breadcrumbs here and there. And I really really appreciate for that. The only real thing I will say, even though I love the idea behind it and I think it's fantastic, I will say that even though it worked for me, there is a potentiality it won't work for other people. And what I mean by that, some people might say it's a bit too convoluted. It's a bit too much. There's too many storylines going on. You could argue and you could say it feels like the writer is trying too much. He's got too many stories, too many threads going on, and he should just focus on the one story. Now, again, for me, it was an issue because by the time that I got the revelation and by the time that I got to the end of the book, I realized what the author was trying to do. How like James he's new, Gwen is new. It's like a life of a new person in Torchwood sort of thing. So it's not just one overall case; it's multiple cases. Some are bigger, some are smaller than others. But it's like I said, it's like a week or a month or whatever in the eyes of somebody new in Torchwood. And again, I really, really like that. I appreciate that. I've never seen that done before in a book before. So it was new to me, but I can see where people would read it and go, that's a bit much. You're trying too many things, you should try this instead of that. So yeah, for me, it works, but I could see for other people, it might not do. But to be honest, the overall twist and the overall ending, again, I'm not going to give it away because I really do want people to read this book. But even though I knew what was coming, and I somewhat knew the end because, again, I've read that many books. I'm pretty good at sussing out what's going on. Even though that, it was still an ending where I was like, I like that ending. Even though I knew where it was going to go, I still appreciate the ending. I like what it was trying to do and what it says and how it ends. And again, the whole lore behind that and how all that works is absolutely fascinating in on itself. But there were still moments before the revelation that I had when I realized it was a series of cases. Even I'm sitting there going, I'm sitting there like the guy from Always Sunny in Philadelphia, I think it's called, where like he's got the board and he's like, look, this link's in here, that link's in there, that link's in there. And I'm trying to think, well, how does the Amok link in with the series G, and how does that link in with the slate? Because again, I didn't even mention about the slate. There's this slate that was given to Torchwood about 108 years ago, and the slate goes off whenever there's a threat that's coming or on its way already here, and the whole mystery behind that, and you do get an answer to that. And that's one of the things I want to drill home is the main thing of a lot of the major story points that matter, shall we say, they all get resolved. There's not a single loose thread. Everything that needs to be resolved gets resolved. All the smaller cases, they get resolved as well. You just don't really get any continuation of them, really. But again, that doesn't matter because there are things in series one, which again, I've only watched series one, but there's things and episodes in series one that you don't get sort of a continuation of, which is fine because you don't always need to. Sometimes things just, we ended it, case closed, and that's it. I'm a big fan of X-Files, and a lot of times with the X-Files episodes, you didn't get any real conclusion. It was just the fact of sometimes it is what it is, blah, 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 and next episode. But you were fine with that because, you enjoyed the show. So yeah, it doesn't really ever bother me with that. But yeah, I was happy with the end goal. I was happy with the whole idea of James and my theory behind it. So yeah, overall story, great, absolutely a cracker. I think it was very ingenious. As for sort of continuity, I couldn't really find any, to be honest. Tell a lie, I found one bit of continuity, but it's not really important continuity, and it's not any continuity to Doctor Who or to the show, really. It's only continuity to me and my last episode that I did, the last book review I did when it comes to Torchwood after Another Life. So if anybody listened to that one, which you haven't, go back and listen to it. But there is a moment where I talk about a little bit of detail where Owen basically gets himself a car, I think it was a Porsche that he got in the last book, and he sits there and he goes, "Oh, I wish I got the Honda S2000." And I made a big thing, and I even mentioned like one of the episodes you can see Owen driving onto the airfield, and he's in a blue Honda S2000. It turns out it wasn't just like a continuous thing. It was something that he ended up deciding to do, because in this book, I even took I took a screenshot. I'm going to read out to you. Wrigley Street, Carthers, noon. Grey clouds shooting spots of rain, black to black. Tenements, front and backs. A relic of labourers' housing. A blue Honda Sports drew up with a ostentatious squeal of disc brakes. Owen and Tosh get out. She flipped out her phone and called Janto. And it's a small little thing of like, I just find it really, I don't know, it's we can call it the Honda conspiracy. I just find it interesting that in the first book he had a Porsche and he says he wish he had the Honda, and then in the show he gets a blue Honda, and then in this book he has a Honda. That's the only continuity I could find. I just wanted to mention it because I thought it was pretty neat. Anyway, another thing that I wanted to mention before I get to overall thoughts, it's a whole quote that I'm going to read out because I think it's really, really interesting, and it's some great writing here. So it goes, and that's going to take this thing out. Jack shrugged. Couldn't honestly say, James, but I can guarantee it will make a whole lot of noise. Really? Oh, yeah. There will be noise. There will be bright lights. There will be woe. There will be weeping and consternation. The streets of Cardiff will resound with the latimination of estate agents. This is Torchwood going to war, then, said Tosh. No, this is Torchwood trying to prevent one, said Jack. You people have never seen a real war, said Davy. Sir? Jack asked, looking at the old man. I said you've never known a real war. Not a real one. It never leaves you. War doesn't. Everything you saw or did, it all clings like a smell you can't ever wash off. 60 years. 60 damn years. It hasn't ever washed off. Absolutely brilliant. When I read that, I was like, I've got to screenshot that because I've got to share it because it's fantastic. But yeah, so that's the only real thing that I wanted to add there. I couldn't find no continuity, so I just wanted to add that. As for sort of my overall thoughts on the book, it's an absolute brilliant book. If I had to give it as like a star rating out of 5 stars, I'd give it a 4. It's up there of being close to a 5. The only reason I didn't give it a 4 is mainly because I just wished the ending was a bit more. That's the only real downside I have, is the fact of you get the revelation, you kind of get your answers answered, and then it kind of just ends. There's no real sort of conclusion. It's just the fact of this happens, that happens, very sad, the end. It's unlike like the first, like for example, the first book, Another Life. How that ended was Owen and Jack, they had a little sit down, they had a chat. Owen basically realizes that how much he's needed and how much Jack respects him and likes him, and that there's a reason why Owen has the station that he has and the respect of Jack and so on and so forth. And that really sort of revitalizes Owen, and again, it's a real character development moment. And then they see a weevil outside the window. They get up and they run after it, and then it ends. So you get like a nice little conclusion, nice bit of character development, and then you have like the continuation of like the adventure isn't over yet, and they go off and get the weevil. Whereas this one kind of like, again, I can't talk about it, but something happens, very sad, and then that's it. And it's kind of like, oh, it's a bit of an anticlimactic cliffhanger. That's the only reason I won't give it a 5 star. Is just the fact of the ending felt a bit flat, where you had this whole build up, this whole mystery, which was absolutely fantastic, and you get all the answers you want and nothing left unturned. It just ends. And that kind of bothered me a little bit, in the fact that is all. So that's the reason I'm not giving it 5 stars, but I still recommend it. I still think it's a cracker. You don't have to read Another Life. Again, with what I found with the Doctor Who books and what I found with these books so far is the fact of they're just self-contained, especially this one. This one's very self-contained. Like, you can jump in at any point. But I'm just me, so I like to go sort of chronologically. But this one, if you didn't want to read the last book, because again, all the spelling mistakes and the grammar errors and all that, and you wanted to jump into a Torchwood book sort of head on, I would say if you want, start here, jump in with this one. You'll have a fantastic time and you will really enjoy it. And I want people to experience the mystery. I want people to experience as I did organically, of who James is and what's going on in the story, and then to slowly piece together things yourself, because I don't want to ruin it, because it's really worth finding out for yourself. And so that's about it, really. There are a few extra things, but not really major. Like, for example, weevils turn up here and there, which I really do appreciate. Which I do have a theory about weevils, by the way, which, yeah, you know what? I'll share it. So there's this theory that I've got about the weevils. In series 1 of Torchwood, there is this sort of moment where there is a heightened activity of weevils everywhere. Now, for anybody that hasn't watched the show, a weevil is basically a creature that's come out of the rift, and they live in the sewer and they eat crap, basically. But sometimes they come out the sewer and they torment people, and they have been known to eat people and attack people. And they are very, very dangerous. They're big claws, big teeth. They look like big sort of hairless gorillas, like Bigfoot sort of thing. And but otherwise they're quite harmless sort of thing. And you find out as sort of the series the first series goes on, that you realize the reason why the weevils are so there's so many weevils is because, and why weevils are going missing, is that I think the third to last episode, where Owen basically goes crazy and he joins like a fight club. They're basically kidnapping weevils and just fighting them in arenas, and sort of rich men, bored men, sort of taking their sort of anger out on them. My theory is, and again, there was weevils in the last book, and there's a heightened sense of weevils in this one. I believe that weevils aren't dangerous. I believe that they are very sort of docile, sort of left to their own device sort of creature, and it's only because of these rich guys, these men, taking them and using and kidnapping them and beating them up and basically killing them. This is kind of sent like a protective scent among the weevils, and that's why we're seeing more weevils running around, and that's why we see more weevils attacking people. It's the fact of they've been provoked. You could probably imagine that these weevils are getting up, coming out the sewer, trying to find their kin that is being taken away. And again, find out that they're being taken, getting angry, and having to take it out on the closest human, which happens to be the odd bloke here and there, and then they just attack people. So that's my, again, it's only a small theory, but that's just my theory that I've been thinking about since I watched series 1, and while I've been reading the last book and why I've been reading this book, of why weevils are so prevalent on the surface, even though Jack and the team always seem to say we haven't had this much activity from the weevils. It's only as of recently we've been getting it, and it's only as of recently that they've left the sewers for some unknown reason. Well, again, my theory is the reason that is because of that episode, that they're being taken and kidnapped and beaten up, is the reason why we're seeing so many of them appear in the books, and why we're seeing so many of them appear in the show. Again, it's a small thing. It's not a big detail. Again, the whole story's not about weevils. They just appear every now and then. They're mentioned, but it's just one of these theories that I'm sort of coming together, and I just think was really, really cool and really neat, and I just wanted to share it with other like-minded Torchwood fans. But yeah, so that's my sort of weevil sort of theory. That's my overall thoughts of Border Princes. Again, I hope you all liked it. I hope you enjoyed it. The next book in the series is Slow Decay. That one looks really, really interesting. From what I've read on the blurb and sort of the read upon it, it looks like sort of the adipose. If you know Doctor Who with the adipose, there's little fat babies. It looks like the adipose, but more sort of body horror, more terrifying, more sort of potentially H.P. Lovecraft's, that sort of style going on. Again, I don't know. I'm only going off the front cover and from reading the blurb. But it looks terrifying, and I hope it is, because I would love. Again, one of my favorite episodes of Torchwood is the episode where they go into the countryside and they get attacked by cannibals. It was one of my favorite episodes. It was terrifying. It was creepy. And I love it when the show, or like when the characters go in that direction. And I want more of that, So I really hope that with this one, with Slow Decay, this is more like a horror experience, a full horror novel. My fingers are crossed. We can only hope. But yeah, so until next time. Really. So thank you very, very much for listening. I've been your host, Luke the Elder Bean. You've been listening to the Howdy Beans podcast. Again, If you listen to this on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you listen to this on Spotify, don't forget to leave me a follow and to rate the podcast 5 stars. And if you listen anywhere else on Apple or any other device or anything like that, make sure to give me a follow so that you get notified whenever I release a new episode. And so thank you very much for listening. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye. Bye.